Welcome to the Dive In, a podcast where we go beyond the surface of the stories that captivate us. I'm your host, Kathleen. Let's dive in. Today we are joined once again by Akash. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. I have a lot of dogs around me, so I apologize if they distract me. But I guess dogs are appropriate for the movie we are talking about in some
Yes.
shape and fashion.
Yes, we've got a great conversation lined up about Wolfmen. So let's dive in.
And not The Wolfman.
Yeah,
That's
just
a different
Wolfman.
movie. This is just
Yeah,
Wolfman. Wolfman.
yes, just
Wolfman.
Wolfman. Yeah, so I guess just a quick non-spoiler synopsis. Wolfman is a 2025 reimagining of the 1941 Universal horror classic, The Wolfman. This film follows husband and wife Blake and Charlotte and their daughter Ginger as they head toward Blake's family cabin for the summer. On the way there, they swerve off the road after nearly hitting some large animal that then starts to hunt them. Blake is scratched by this creature and, to their horror, starts to transform into the very being that is stalking them.
It's
Yeah.
that's it. That's literally the movie. I was listening to you say it and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the movie I watched.
I mean,
Sorry
that
if you guys saw me get attacked. My dog decided to sneak under around the chair, shaking everything.
he
He's
just
still
wants
here.
attention. He's like, why are you not paying attention to
Yeah,
me?
why are you talking to nobody? Like he's like, I don't understand computers, father. This movie
Uh,
was very it ramped up very quickly.
it did. Yeah. They started out very, like, they were in, and I don't know which city was. Was it
Oregon.
Chicago? Oregon? Oh, you're right.
Well, the beginning was somewhere in Oregon. I don't want to say anywhere because they didn't ever really specify. It was just like, here's the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so they're in a city and they show Blake, which I don't know how I felt about this dynamic at all. It's like I felt like they were trying to like build something up and then they just decided not to build on it. Like they kind of made it seem like Blake was going to have a temper or something, the way that he reacted to Ginger like walking around on the those barricades, which is justified for him to yell at her. But the way that he was just like, I'm so sorry for yelling at you. That's not me. And I was like, but is it? Like, do we have like anger issues? And now we're gonna like doubt that he's transforming because of the anger issues or something?
I
No,
think it
didn't
was
play
to
into that at
pair.
all.
I think it was to parallel the beginning of the movie where we see that his father's not great, and so I think it's to. I think it was that to show like, hey, I'm from his blood, but I'm not him, which also comes like a full circle moment later in the film as well.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like it was a lot for the beginning because they in the very beginning they show like the little um like lore for the woods for that area, talking about the hill fever or the mouth of the wolf is what they call it.
Yeah,
And that illness or
Face of the
whatever.
Wolf.
Hmm?
Was it
No,
Face of the Wolf that
no,
you
it's
meant?
mouth of the wolf.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, but I don't know, it was interesting that they had that. And then they had the backstory with like Blake as a young kid with his father, which honestly, at first I didn't even realize that they were going to be the same people. I was like, okay, so we're opening up with this, but then we're going to go and find new characters again after we already did that. But then they did, in
I
fact.
thought it would be new characters, but it was not. In fact, it was just him older, which makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does make sense, but I didn't know for certain.
Yeah. I feel like that could have been like flashbacks or talked about instead of showing us just because it felt a little. It was just like a long beginning to get us to where we needed to be, I felt like, for a short
He,
movie.
I agree. I think they did all of this because once it started, it didn't really stop.
Yeah, there was no like questioning what was really happening to him. It just kind of, I don't
They
even know how
weren't
to explain
dumb.
it.
Like they've read
Yeah.
about werewolves in like fiction before, and like they're a writer and a journalist, but they were like, "What is happening?"
Well, they didn't even like sit there and be like, oh my gosh, you're turning into a werewolf. They're like, you're sick. And I was like, okay, yeah, yeah. Like, it was interesting that they took that take too, that it was a fever and less
They took it as a disease, which is in line with like what people at what the original lycanthropy was supposed to be. Like back in the day, it wasn't as if I mean back in the day it was like crazy, like the monster manuals and such. Like I think I remember originally werewolves, and I'm saying originally as if there's like a specific time that this is where it started, but it was like had to be shot with a silver bullet from a loved one. Eventually it turned into just a silver bullet. Then it was like, well, if we just cut their heads off, can't bring a head back, all kinds of things. But at some point, it was more of instead of like, look at this power I have now that I'm a werewolf. It was like, no, this is a disease, and like they lose control of themselves,
Yeah.
and like it was like you were man and then you were wolf, and
Yeah.
so
I mean, it
this
makes
goes back to
sense.
that.
It's 'cause I mean it is always by like a bite, and in this case it was a scratch. Um, at least I think it was. He like broke
It
through
was
the
a pretty
glass.
deep wound.
Yeah, it happened really quickly. He just like was able to break through the glass and scratch them all at the same time and from above, which they made it seem like when they went off the road and were up in that tree, they made it seem like it was like so far down. But then once they were down on the ground, like the truck was right there.
I think the bottom was curved or steep because
Mm.
it was one of those like they got that. I mean, it was still like he had started to jump a good 6 7 feet down, maybe more.
Yeah, but it looked like it was like 20 feet, and then it was
Yeah,
only like
I
six
think
feet.
where the cabin was, it was a lower drop.
Yeah, no, like when they went off the road, they went down a hill for
Hmm.
sure, but it made it seem like almost like it was like Jurassic Park, where they in Jurassic Park 2, where they have like, well, that was like more like a bottomless pit almost, but it just looked further like when the guy fell out and when the thing was attacking them, it looked like it was much further down than they were.
He
And then
also
once they
like
were
at
on the,
no point just explained that he'd seen something like this before to his family.
well, they did mention at the end that about the father like going out into the woods and never seeing him again. So it's possible that she had that like he was like, well, they have this legend. Like, so it seems like they've talked about it in the past. Like, and it'd be weird not to
It
bring up
made it
that
seem
legend.
like they talk about nothing. Like it made it
I
seem like here's like the relationship on the rocks and all that jazz.
Yeah, which I I
I don't think
love
added too
Julia.
much to the story personally.
Yeah. I mean, I love Julia Garner. I don't know what she was doing in this film. Like, it just
Really,
because I felt like she gave nothing.
not that really like Julia Gardner's bad. Julia Gardner's a fantastic actress. It was,
Yeah.
but this movie at one point I thought it was going to be all about the guy,
Yeah.
Blake. I think Christopher Abbott, but it's turned into the Julia Gardner movie.
Well, yeah, but she had like one emotion pretty much the whole time. And she was
Confusion.
like, I'm just a bad mother. And I was like, well, what? Like, they were like saying a lot of stuff instead of like showing. And she's just like, I don't know how
Yeah,
to connect with my daughter. I don't know if I can do that. And I'm like, what?
have a conversation with her.
What?
What do you
Who
mean? Like
says
I was
that?
so confused. I was like, are you just working a bunch? Like, all right, go to the zoo with her. I don't. I'm so confused.
Yeah, it was. I was like, you guys just seem like you were just put in the same room. Like, not even that you guys were in a relationship and that now you're in a fight. Like, it just feels like they just put two strangers in a room and we're like, just talk, hang out. And I was like, I
I
don't
was
see a
legitimately
relationship.
more interested in Derek, who we saw for like 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, Derek, tell me about what's been going on in your life." Oh, you're dead.
I know, because I think they like brought him in to give us like the creepy, like, I thought they were gonna do like creepy neighbor vibes. Like, is he the one that's like stalking us or hunting us? Like, I felt like they had a lot that they could have worked with, and then like they kept like bringing it in, like, oh, maybe we'll work with this one, maybe we'll work with that one, and then they were just like, nah, we'll just move on from that or kill them or whatever, instead of like going deeper into it, making it seem like he's the one stalking them or he's the one that's the
Hmm.
the diseased
The
one or something. I
Wolfman,
I
yeah.
thought maybe he was gonna come back. Like I know we saw him like get killed for the most part, but he was dragged off still alive. I think I know that he had like huge wounds in his stomach. Part of me was like, maybe he'll come back anyways, and there'll be a third Wolfman now that they have to worry about. But that didn't happen.
No, and it was so interesting because like there had to be guns in that house.
Yeah, I thought Julia had found one at one point, and then
Yeah, she
yeah,
found
oh,
the
she did at the
rifle,
end. Yeah,
and I'm like,
but
there
there
had
should
to
have
be
been
more that
more.
Blake knew, and Blake knew where they were. Like, it's like you're living in the woods and you were hunting deer with your dad. Like, there's more than one gun there.
For sure, for sure.
It is very interesting because of Derek, though. They introduced him, and they were driving down the road,
Yeah.
which they go off with the box truck. How fast were you going on these terrible roads? I would not have been driving faster than like 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, they should have been able to like hit their brakes or whatever,
And
or
like
if they
I know he
like,
was like
yeah.
turning and looking, but I'm like, it wasn't whatever, like it's fine, but it's so confusing. I'm like also like just hit the guy at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Like especially they didn't even think it was a person. They thought it was an animal, which I would have been like, that's a person immediately.
He says to his wife, Charlotte, we can refer to the character. He says to Charlotte, I saw it standing like a person. And I'm like, what do you know that stands like a person besides a person? And the thing is, the actors were doing their damn best.
They I don't know about Julia Garner. I'm sorry. I've seen
Yeah.
her act, and that just felt like she was
I'm,
just
I'm I'm
sitting
I'm
there
thinking
saying
it
the
was just
lines.
like they made, and the thing is, Julia Garner can act. Like
Yeah, she can. I have like
she's been in
she
quite a
can
few
act.
things. Even recently, she's been in quite a lot of things. Wasn't she in
Yeah.
like Royal Hotel just a year or two ago? And in
Oh,
Ozark, she was amazing in Ozark.
yeah. I haven't seen her in Ozarks. I've heard a lot of good things, but I saw her in like the Anna Delvey stuff, and she was
Yep,
really good
Inventing
in
Anna.
that. I was like, you gave so much more emotion and so much more fear and anger as Anna Delvey than you did as Charlotte.
It was so interesting. I do appreciate some. They did a lot of callbacks in this movie to like beginning things. It's like, oh, the girl can read his mind. Obviously not, but like that was a fun thing they did. They did the whole circle of father son life thing, very sad. And then they did like, well, I feel like Charlotte was saying how like, oh, she loves you and not me and blah blah blah. And well, now it's just you, baby. Now it's just you.
Yeah,
We're far enough in now where the spoilers don't matter.
yeah, and I honestly I think that I think I know we're like saying negative things about this movie. It actually was pretty decent. It had me jumping a few times like and the
Where did it have you jumping? Tell me where it had you jumping,
in the
please.
very beginning I think there was something that definitely made me jump. Um
I
and
thought the beginning of the movie, that little father son thing was scarier than a lot of the rest of it.
yeah, I think that's where I jumped was through the
Okay.
father son part. But I don't know. Like, I still think it was a decent movie. I think it was well made. I think, like you said, like they did a lot of callbacks. Like whatever they showed in the beginning, they showed again towards the end, which I think is a mark of a good movie. And I wish the actors had more to play with throughout it. Like I think there was so many things there that they could have used to make the movie better, and they didn't. They chose not to, essentially. But I do want to call out. I mean, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but like the practical effects. I mean, all of the effects were practical. They did not CGI that stuff. Like they made it all very practical.
Oh, I did not know that. That's amazing. I was a big fan of the visual cuts from her talking and not understanding him to switching to where he thinks he's speaking clearly and he has no idea what she's saying, but like that beautiful like normal color grading to blue, that was masterfully done every time they did it. And it was the same scenes. Hats off to the cameramen and the
Yeah.
editing department for that.
Well, I don't know about those scenes in particular, but like his transformation was
Oh yeah,
practical.
yeah, I know. I was just like
Okay.
would I call them costume design people for the practical effects?
It was I have who it is. I have who it is. It is the effects, the prosthetics and special makeup effects designer. His name was Arjun Tuiton.
People have been saying
Yeah.
negative things about the design of this werewolf, and the fact of the matter is, like, it's a fictional creature, like, and this one is more of a disease-ridden based one. So I think it worked.
It's more about like a man going feral into like more of the animal instincts and like transforming them in a practical way, not like completely changing their physiology, but doing what
Yeah,
they can with their current physiology, making it as close to a wolf as possible. And I
the
think,
rabies and stuff. It was like very rabies inspired.
yeah, yeah, very much like rabies.
Rabies and mange, I think it's called, when like hair, like because he was started losing his hair and stuff like that. And when they had his like physique changing, it wasn't like, oh, he's more muscular now. It was literally like it seemed almost like when his face was changing, it seemed more like tumors popping out than it wasn't like, oh, my bones, my bone structure. Like this looked bad, like bad in a good way. Like it looked they did amazing, but like that man's dead. That man's not a man anymore. Put that thing down.
and for as far as like diseases go, like that only took a couple hours. Like it was all done in one night. Like it that's a fast disease.
I thought it was a whole day. I think it was a whole next day as well. Because like there was sunlight
Yeah,
at
there
one
was
point, right?
sunlight. It just randomly they're sitting there and all of a sudden they look outside and there's sun. I was like, what happened the rest of the night?
Like you just slept, yeah. And it's like they were looking for help, and I'm like, where? Like they I'm like the sun's out. You could go now.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't have like someone respond to them on the CB radio or something, like have some rescue team attempt to save them and get killed in the process or something, because that's
I think that's what
very,
Derek's character was for. Derek was saying there's not a lot of them out there anymore, so maybe
mm,
that's why the CB didn't work. Because beforehand, his father was on the CB and people were talking to him.
yeah. Well,
Dan was
yeah,
talking to him.
yeah, his Darren, he said his name was his father. Derek's father was talking to Blake's dad.
Mm,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because
Yeah, they
I
really wanted to keep this cast small. They're like, there's no one else in this world other than these five people
yo
or six
Derek.
people.
Apparently, Derek didn't have a family or anything because no one's looking for Derek.
Nope. I mean, if you grew up in a small town like that, that's believable though. And he was still fairly young for someone to be on his own.
Calling this a town is a stretch.
The woods.
Yeah, the woods in Oregon. I like it. It's very interesting for that. What I don't really I don't have much to say about other characters because we've gone over all the characters. Like that's it. The child actress was great. She didn't actually say that much overall, though.
Yeah. Yeah, the child Ginger, her character didn't have really any lines other than like, oh, I know what you're thinking. It's that you love me and that you're
You
gonna
left him
protect
out there.
me.
No, he tried to save you. I have a lot of I've seen a lot of reviews and comments all up and down about this
I
movie. People are
have
kind of
not.
divided on how
Yeah.
they feel about it.
I do think there's like a few lines that I thought were really
Hit me with them. Hit me with them.
well, so there's when Blake takes like the armoire or whatever by the front door and puts it in front of the door and literally Charlie just sits there and she's like, is that gonna hold? I
That
was
was
like, really? Like you didn't even
I
help
was
him
like,
move
could you
it.
be useful at all?
Yeah, like say something a little bit more useful. Like, should we put something else in front of it? Like, can I help? Like, are there other doors we should be like putting stuff in front of?
She was doing nothing. She was literally doing nothing and then complaining about it. And I'm like, I hate that character. I hate those characters. Because in real life, like if my fiance if shit like that happened, my fiance would be like, all right, what do you need me to do? Or like she'd be doing something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like look
Same.
for a weapon. Like what do you mean? Like you've lived in this
I
house
know.
before.
Go grab a knife. Like find the kitchen lady.
A
Grab
knife, a
grab a
gun, whatever.
knife or
It took way
something.
too
Like,
long for them to grab a knife in this movie.
yeah.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying go fight the thing, but like be ready to defend
Yeah. Be
yourself.
ready to defend yourself. Yeah. There's another line that Ginger says towards the end, like at the very last scene when they're up in the hunting
Hunting
the
blind.
deer blind. Yeah. And Ginger says, he wants this to be over. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I will give it to her. At least she said that. I thought for sure she would be like, wait, no, he's gonna protect us. But she said he wants this to be over. I was like, come on.
The cliches were cliches,
Yeah, it
but
was.
they were necessary for the story, like the story to progress. The cliches had to happen for the story of this to progress. It's very interesting because like I thought the movie was incredibly interesting at the beginning, and then there were a lot of cool creative like transformations and camera work, but like it lost some of that spice. I would say it And it's not a long movie. It's not a super long movie. Like they did good. Like I would call this more of an action thriller than a horror movie, personally, though.
Well, it
There
does
was
have a little
body
bit of,
transformation
yeah,
horror
there's a little bit of body gore in there, like when he was like, when he was scratching his arm
and biting his arm,
and
or
biting
when he
his
was
arm.
ripped his own leg off.
Which I don't, as far as like, I literally wrote this down. Like, as far as animal instincts go, that is not the first thing any animal would do to get out. Like, they would try like a million other things before deciding, like, gotta gnaw my own leg off. Like, especially as a human, like, you
Also, he
can
should have just
pull
died
those things
like
open.
minutes after, seconds after that. Like
Yeah,
his
bleeding
blood, what?
out.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, you can't just walk around without a foot.
yeah, and
Uh,
he was able to catch up to them. Like, it's not like she was in high heels or anything. Like they were in normal shoes and sneakers.
Yeah, unless he was like running, like, which they didn't even show this, but like, unless he was running on his hands and his one foot, which is possible, but they didn't show that. So,
Yeah, like it takes a
yeah,
while. Like dogs get used to it, but like
yeah,
it is what it is. But it's been interesting because I see a lot of people talking about how like this was a reflection and it was pertinent and timely, and other people are like, characters seem to felt a bit thin, standard horror fare. Like
yeah,
I was alone in an IMAX theater watching this, so I was like ready for like to be scared because I was like, oh, it's a bit creepy.
yeah.
And
And you
then
weren't.
I was fine.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. There were a few, like, I think like the truck scene, definitely had me on edge. Because that's like a classic horror trope, but like it still always gets me. Like, you never know when it's gonna happen, but you know something's gonna pop up. So,
I think the biggest thing with this is like I did think Christopher Abbott did well as a man going through a disease in a rapid amount of time, turning into a wolf. But like I think what's the disappointing part about it is like at the beginning we still see his perspective and there's still human thought. And whereas the next second and third, like as we switch over, like we no longer get his perspective at all. It's just like he's a beast now, but like we saw that he still had mental awareness of some sort. So it's one of those like if we're gonna switch back, I like it would be nice to see like what he's thinking. Why does he need to do this kind of thing? But instead we were just like, this is just a monster now, and it's like,
yeah.
but like he just wasn't, and he was protecting his family, and like I understand, but like show it like we saw him transform, but like we didn't see any of the internal workings at all. And when they went back and we saw like the blue light vision of his, blue light doesn't work, but the night vision thing of his when he's in the dark in front of his family, I'm like, okay, are we gonna like okay, give me some thoughts. What's he thinking? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they could have shown like the internal struggle somehow, like him like wanting to, but then deciding not to kind of situation, like while they're asleep or something like that.
Because we had
Um,
like a dichotomy between him and um Charlotte, and then we just didn't.
and I do think that like part of the transformation too, like was a little like some of it wasn't clear to me, like when all of a sudden he had like super human hearing or whatever, and he could hear that spider in that room. When I was watching that, I was like, oh, someone's banging on the wall, like it's trying to like dig its way in or something like that, or there's like a second like entrance or something. And then I realized, oh no, it's the sound of the spider walking. Because in my brain, I was like, why is the spider so calm walking on this wall while someone's banging on it?
Also massive.
It was a big spider, yeah. But they zoomed in on it.
It zoomed in.
But
I was so big spider.
yeah. And I thought there would be a lot more. So like as I'm sure you know, the other diseased person was his father.
Hmm.
And they show that by showing his tattoo with his last name on it. Like when he like opened up the one thing and it had like the jerky and stuff, I was like, oh, like he probably still like lives here. He's probably still somewhat human and not fully animalistic. Like obviously his brain is probably animalistic, but he still has like human qualities. So he's been living here. And like, so that was my thought process. Like, oh, this is like his victims, like whatever he captured, whatever animals or whomever, that's what's in there. And he still lives there. So I thought he would like get in through some like other secret door or something. And none of that happened. Like I had all of these expectations because it was his dad. And it was like, no, it's more about like a family trope more than anything else.
It was also to show like his scent because Charlie didn't smell anything, so that's when it's really started kicking in because his sense of
Mm.
smell really kicked up.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on
Um,
that.
I didn't think of it until this moment. Did not think of it until this moment right here. I do think because the director was Winnell, right? He did The Invisible Man.
Yeah. Yes.
I It's interesting because I don't know what I could attribute as like to him as the issues. It's one of those like this was a very lean movie. Like they were like, we are not putting any fluff in here. Here you go. But parts of it still seemed like fluff. Parts of it still seemed like fluff, and I think the music was fantastic. The music department did great, but I felt like it overly relied on music at sounds at one point. Like when she's doing all the car stuff, and like it's like, oh, we're in a rush, we're doing this. I'm like, have we not been in a rush this whole movie? Like, have we not been rushing this whole movie? Like, so that was interesting. And then like, oh yeah, he destroyed the gear shift. I'm like, what?
Just like isn't there like a thing, and I've seen this in other movies where, and I don't know if it's real, but I've seen it in other movies where people will just take a screwdriver, put it in the gear shift, and then do it that way. I'm like, just do that. Like, figure something else out so you can take the truck.
I mean, Charlotte is a journalist from a big city.
True. Yeah.
I trust Ginger to do that more than Charlotte.
Yeah, she really was not in her element at all. There was like something, oh, her being able to fix the truck though. I was like, ah,
Nothing has told me that you can do this. Yeah,
yeah.
nothing has proven to me that you are capable of doing this.
That yeah, those were my thoughts. I'm like, how does she have that knowledge? Like, does she even drive a car? Like, I know people who live in Manhattan who never got their driver's license, so I would not expect them to know how to do
Yeah,
anything like that.
and I think he was in. Do we know in Chicago? I'm looking this up
I don't know which city it was.
because it could have been. I figured it'd be somewhere in California, right?
Yeah, if they drove there, yeah, it was probably
No, I don't need Manchester City. When I type in Wolf Man City, that is not what I mean. Da, da, da. San Francisco. So
San
it takes place in
Francisco.
San Francisco and rural Oregon. But they filmed it in New Zealand. That makes sense. The forest scenes were shot in Queenstown, and the farmstead sets were built in Wellington. Oh,
Oh, okay. Oh wow. Um,
it's
yeah,
that's very interesting.
yeah. Um, I will say at the towards the end, like there's two things I want to talk about at the end. Like one,
Go for it.
the fact that Charlotte hesitated shooting him, like she just sat there with the gun, like didn't even feel like she was about to shoot. Like it just felt like she was just holding it. And I was like, there's no intensity here. Like I don't know if they needed to like get closer on her face or something to make it feel like she was about to shoot while they were waiting or whatever. But they just sat there. Then the daughter said that cliche line. And we sat there a little bit longer. And then it finally like came at him and she pulled the trigger. And I was like, okay, like at least she pulled the trigger, but like I felt like there was just too much time in between. There didn't feel tense enough at all.
The tension was lost at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't feel it at all. And at that point I was like, I knew that she had the upper hand. Like
She's got the gun. Just shoot the
yeah,
guy.
she's got the gun. Like why are we waiting? Why are we hesitating? And then the other thing that I wrote down, so the end scene where we see like the mountains
Hmm.
and the tree and everything, like that was something that, and I didn't even pick up on this until I went back to look for something else and I heard him say this. But he was talking to Charlotte about like there's this one place that like once you see it, it makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. And that's the scene they ended on. So that was cool. But I kind of wish they had opened with that. Like they were doing a lot of back and forth, and I wish they had opened with that scene, like him and his dad there, and then they go into the woods. Um,
I mean, he
also,
they did have him and his dad there.
well, in the woods, like near the deer blind, but were they near the mountains?
Yeah, yeah, because they started and he was like, "This is what it's all about, son." I believe that's what he says. Let me see.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, because it's him waking up and folding his sheets, and then they go out and they see that first, then they go into the woods.
Yeah, I totally don't remember this opening sequence for some reason. I don't know if I just like looked down and missed it for like the first minute, but like him and in the house making his bed and then walking by that, don't remember it. So I withdraw my former statement. I love that they opened and ended it in the same way.
It's what's interesting is like the beginning of this movie sets up a whole different movie, it felt like.
Yeah, like
And by the end of it, I was like, what are we doing again?
I would have rather, I wish they had like stuck with that more, like stuck more about the father, been more concerned about like, oh my gosh, they declared my dad dead, but I don't think he is. Like, I wish they had done more of that, like him believing in the disease and his wife being like, no, he just got lost in the woods. Like, that would have made a much more, like,
That would have been interesting. But it's also interesting that Christopher Abbott's who's cast, because I don't know if you know this actually. Ryan Gosling was supposed to play the main character.
what?
Yeah, he was unavailable and such. And I was like, I don't think I would have liked Ryan Gosling as the main character. I liked Christopher Abbott as the main character.
Are they sure? Are we sure like the director just didn't want him and Ryan Reynolds was like, nah, I'm good?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, sorry. And Ryan Gosling said, nah, I'm good.
I,
And that's why he was unavailable.
I don't think Ryan Gosling's a good fit for a film like this, personally.
No,
Nothing against him. I think he's a great
no,
actor. I just don't think he's the guy for this.
I can't imagine him in this. He doesn't seem like somebody that would be in a role like this, but maybe he was trying to branch into something new. And I'm sure after the success of Invisible Man, he was like, yeah, no, like that sounds great.
I
Um,
really think Christopher Abbott did good. I like the thing is like there's so little people in this movie. It's like how many times can I be like, yo, I like this character. Like it's very I I I watched this movie. Would I recommend this movie? Would I watch it again?
I would,
I don't think I'd watch it again. I don't
really.
think I missed anything.
I mean, I probably would. Like, it wouldn't be the first thing that I like recommend to anybody. But if someone was like, "Oh, I haven't seen this. Like, I'd like to watch it," I'd be like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, like let's sit down and watch it." It's not my favorite thing,
Oh,
but
I'm not gonna be like, oh, I hate this movie. No, it's just one of those
yeah,
like I'm not gonna reach for it. But if someone was, if my fiance was like, hey, I want to try it, I'd be like, yeah, sure, we can watch it. It's
yeah,
not very long.
yeah,
You're not gonna go to bed and have nightmares. As long as you're not in rural Oregon. If you're in Oregon, maybe be careful about the hill fever. You don't want to be turned into a werewolf. I don't even know if I could call this a werewolf.
Well, it's not a werewolf.
It's
They
not.
literally said it's a disease, but I do like, and I like on I think I already said it, but oh wait, Ryan Gosling was an executive producer on this.
Would you look at that?
So that's probably why you're probably right. He probably would have starred in it if he was available.
I do think
Interesting.
this is a. I don't want to use the word step down, but that's what I'm going to go with. I do think it's a step down from the Invisible Man.
Oh, 100%. Invisible Man was a very, very good and well-made movie. And like I said, this had the
And it
bones
had my
for a
boy Aldous
very
Hodges
good.
in it.
What?
I love Aldous Hodges.
Oh.
I just love him. I think he's such a fun guy.
Yeah. I feel like this movie, Wolfman, like I feel like it had like the bones to be a very good movie and they just kind of
Yeah.
it just fell flat. Like I don't know if it was like the editing room floor or what, but something wasn't there. Like it was just
As weird as it
missing.
sounds, it seems too lean. It had like I feel like it could have been fattened up. I don't know
Yeah,
what that
like
means, but it sounds good.
it needed a little bit more story to get us invested in the characters.
Yeah, because you didn't really like. Yeah, we're looking at these characters, but did we really care about any of them? Like, we barely had time to get used to them.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, oh, Derek's creepy. Derek's dead.
Yeah, I know. It was like I was like, oh, this is like a great like horror movie or like classic cabin in the woods trope, like where you have like the creepy neighbor. Like there was no lead up. Like they didn't need that car crash. They could have used Derek as a pawn to be like, oh, it must be the creepy neighbor. That must be Derek standing out and like standing out there or something. And maybe Derek has the fever and something like that. But they didn't. It's like they missed an opportunity because they wanted this like dramatic entrance where they see Derek get killed, and it's like we still could have done that, but we could have
Charlotte was so
waited.
against Derek, too. Like, from the beginning, she's like, no, he has a gun, and blah, blah. I'm like, everyone has a gun here.
Yeah, I mean Blake did say that. He's like everyone has a gun here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like she was like, "Oh, we can find it ourselves." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Just ask
You
the neighbor for help."
Yeah, and it's not like it wasn't a random neighbor either. It wasn't like, "Oh no, I've lived here for like 20 years and he'd never met him." It was like, "Oh no, I knew him as a kid. Like my dad knew his dad." Like it that's a trusted person for the most part.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it wasn't just a complete stranger, like random man at the gas station kind of trope. Like it's someone he knew. You should trust
Yeah.
him.
Also, they're all lucky they didn't just all have concussions from that car accident. And then
Yeah.
Blake, we like Blake. Blake's the main character. We were following Blake, and then Blake gets infected and eventually just can't speak anymore. So our main lead is no longer having a conversation with the audience.
Yeah.
Because that's why I was like really upset when they started not going back and forth anymore. Because like beforehand, it's like okay, they can't communicate with each other, but he's still communicating to the audience.
Hmm.
And then there was just no communication to the audience.
Yeah.
And and yeah, we were seeing him chase them and blah blah blah, but it literally went from him defending them to him hunting them down in the span, legitimately in the span of 5 minutes.
Yeah. Like it was very quick, like because he literally went off and killed his father, who was after them,
Transformed.
um, and then like completed his transformation
Hmm.
essentially. Like, oh, he came back, I think, with his father's finger, like threw it up, and then next thing you know, he's like gonna chase after y'all now.
Yeah, like a lot of vomiting blood with this fever.
Yeah. So, and you would think that like with something like that, you wouldn't survive. Like that's clearly something that's like destroying you from the inside out. But yet
Hmm.
apparently they survive like
For a
however
while.
long. Yeah. Well, we also don't know how long his dad has been missing. Like they never talked about that. They just said like, oh, they
Yeah, it's
finally
just
declared him
been a
dead.
while.
Yeah. Been long enough for them, like a statute of limitation for them to declare him dead. I don't know how long that is. So,
It's very yeah, it is very interesting with that because of that specifically. It's like, "Oh, all right."
yeah,
It's like how long does that? I mean, I'm also not going to research that because that would be very strange.
I'll research it.
For us to know. Let's see. Oh, are you? How long does someone need to be missing?
7 years or more.
Well, it says even after 7 years, the court may require substantial evidence. So at
Yeah.
least, I like what's the minimum? Most commonly 7 years. Okay.
Yeah. So at least 7 years. So at least since their daughter was born. I don't know how old she was, but
It's like
yeah.
maybe eight.
Yeah. She didn't say a
Ginger,
lot, so
she was
I
yeah, she
can't
was
gauge
not
it.
old.
Yeah.
You could have aged her if she had spoken more. You would have known.
Well, yeah, but based on like what she talked about, although a lot of movies will like be like, "Oh, he's 6," and then they can hold like perfectly good conversations the whole time, or they can't talk at all. And I'm like, they're 6. They should be able to hold a conversation, but like not well. I don't know.
It's very. I just think I this I do think. Oh, overall, I do think this movie. I think this movie could have been better. I think it had a lot of cool aspects to it, the practical effects, the visual effects, even. I honestly I did like the two people that were the Wolfmen. I thought they did really good with the movements and such like that. Big fan of that. Hats off to people that play the monsters. And that's about it. I wish there was. I it's like I wish there was more to it. If it makes that's I think that sums up our thoughts. We wish there
Yeah.
was more,
We wanted more. Yeah. Which we don't say a lot, I feel like, about movies, because a lot of times we're just like, there was too much, or they should have
or
just
it's like
changed the
just enough.
story.
We're like,
Yeah.
this is a good yes. That's it. In this one, it was like
Yeah. Like,
maybe a little bit more would have been good.
yeah. And I loved the practical effects. I do wish they had shown a little bit more of the transformation, like made it more dramatic, but like I appreciate that they did that because I think a lot of movies are leaning towards that more now because people are realizing that that's what the audiences want. The green screen and the digital stuff we don't need. Especially when there's so many amazing people out there that could do this.
I do think Wanell is the director, right?
Yeah, Wanell, Lee Wanell.
I think if this is so far like the lowest on Wanell's directorship, then he's crushing it, man. Like, cause like I'd still give this movie probably a 6 or 7 out of 10. Like, it's not like nothing too hot, nothing like it's not a 10 out of 10, but I don't think it's like a 1 or a 2 by any means.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was,
I wanted to be a little bit more scared.
yeah, like it had the
Mhm.
bones of a good horror movie. It was just missing a lot within it. That's all.
And we talked about the cliches that were necessary with it, and
Yeah.
but and there was like a few tropes and such that you had to have. Like, it's a monster transformation movie. Like, there's certain tropes that are just gonna come with that. It didn't. They weren't too much though. Like, they were exactly where you thought they'd be, but there wasn't like a crazy amount of anything. Like, obviously we knew when the windshield wipers cleared the fog, he was gonna be there. But like, you want that. Like, there are some tropes with monster horror where you're like, well, I hope they do this. Like, how else were they gonna do the thing?
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of The Dive In. If you enjoyed today's deep dive, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. What should we dive into next? Let us know on the. Until next time. Bye.
Watch more movies.